Recording in progress.
Hello, my loves, and thank you so much for joining me on the Get Your Gaia Coaching podcast. I have an amazing guest, a current client that I thought would be very important for you to hear from in her journey. And so, with that being said, Scarlett, girl, welcome to the Get Your Gaia Coaching podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored and super excited to be here. I'm excited.
Good, me too, girl. Let's get
Yay.
into it. Tell the people who you are, what you do, and then
Mhm.
we'll get into kind of your journey a little bit.
For sure. So, hi, everyone. Like Amber said, my name is Scarlett. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and a boundaries coach, and with my business, Elevate Healing LLC. So, that's who I am in short.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
girl, you're a boundaries coach, but you're
Mhm.
in this program that has to do with boundaries. So, let's talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that, right? And
Mhm.
maybe, why you decided to look for help in this part of your life, your love life.
I would say, like, the biggest reason I look for help in this part of my life is because I didn't know how to truly healthily and effectively date. Like, I had recognized I didn't have those skills, and then I started thinking more. I'm like, actually, no one's ever taught me
Right.
how to date, and so, like, when I got hooked onto either your social media and then your podcast, I'm like, oh, okay, I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Was that intimidating? Was that exciting for you to think about that work that you had to do?
It was because I'm always about like self-improvement. I'm like, all right, let's get to this work. I got to do it. I got to practice what like these podcasts are saying. I got to practice what, like your Instagram, posts were saying, or just your videos or your lives. And I'm like, because it was a very different information that I had never heard before. And I'm like, huh, that's a good point. And then it just really resonated with me because, like I said, it was just very vast information that I've ever heard for about what dating should be.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm a different kind of girl. What I say. Okay, so you hooked onto my Instagram. How did you initially hear about me?
So a colleague slash friend of mine told me about you. She heard about you from somebody who actually took your program and who got their guy.
Uh-huh.
And then she sent me the first podcast that I heard of yours, which girl are you?
Uh-huh.
And immediately, I don't remember the details of what it was. I'm like, oh yeah, I am for sure the hard girl. I am for sure the hard girl. And I'm just like, and then I just became hooked to your podcast ever since. So it was my colleague and friend who initially told me about you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think people think, I don't think I can get my guy in this program. And literally 90% of the people that are in my 6-month program get their guy. Like, as you've seen in the program,
Mhm.
I think in the last 4 months, we've had 13 exclusive relationships, including your own. Congratulations.
Mhm. Thank you.
2 engagements and one woman that's moved in with her guy. So,
Uh,
like, all of this is so possible. Can you talk to
mhm.
the people about maybe how you were feeling before kind of getting into the program and like where your mindset was about if this could happen for you or not?
So before the program, I would honestly say, like, I didn't think it was possible. I honestly did not. And so, because it was just like, well, if it didn't work for me before, why would it work for me now?
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that was missing was, like I said, I didn't have the right dating skills or the healthy dating skills. And so before I came in, I was very intimidated because I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing? Is this even going to work? And so just really started going into self-sabotaging. And then I had to really start quieting those thoughts and be like, just try it. You don't know. Give it a chance. So when I really gave it a chance, like, immediately I started seeing a difference. And I'm like, oh, okay, this works. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, girl, I kind of got that sense because generally I have my clients pay on a monthly basis. You had
Mhm.
paid them, and then I want to say like a month or a half, you're like, I'm paying all of this.
Yep. Yeah,
Like,
I'm
I'm
like, send
finishing
me
up
the
my
whole bill,
payment.
please.
I was like, oh, okay, girl. Like, go ahead, do you then, girl.
Mhm.
So I hear you when you're saying that. Let's talk about the consultation, because I think that that was a very pivotal moment for
Absolutely.
you, and based on the conversations that we had after that consultation. So talk to me about actually, one, having that consultation, and then two,
Mhm.
how you felt while you were having the consultation with me.
So having the consultation with you was, if I'm just gonna say, if you want some life transformational information, the consultation is where it starts. And so like for me, just hearing all of like what I was doing was not effective. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Because one of the biggest thing you had told me in the consultation was, oh girl, you're doing too much. You're like doing way too much. You got to pull back. And I'm like, and I remember you saying that and I got tearful because it really resonated with me because I
Yeah.
always felt like I was doing too much. And so it was just like, okay, like just, and just all, and it was really like, you were pouring into me. And that meant so much to me because I was like, here's this person I don't even know who actually wants me to win, you
Yes.
know, and this, and that's what that really, it felt so safe, felt so serene and protected, especially afterwards, because I really sat up and thought about it. And like even when we did our follow-up consultation, I'm like, yes, let's go, sign me up. Because I wanted more of that, because I knew I needed more of that experience in order to like be in a different space to actually date the right way.
I love that. I'm getting emotional a little bit because no one's ever said that. Like, um, that's my intention,
Mhm.
to pour it to the women. And just to hear that from you just means so much. So thank you for sharing that, because that is my intention in these consultation calls. And I just think that this is so possible. And um, I just think that every woman, especially if you're a woman of color, you deserve to have this love. And so thank you for sharing that, because that means a lot to me. That is my intention. That's why I do what I do. And that's why I give so much. So I'm glad
Oh,
that you felt that way. And I'm glad that you felt poured into, because that's
yeah.
literally what I try to do each and every consultation.
Yeah, for sure. Because
Thank
like I
you.
said, it was just like, it just felt so like, just so like this, here's this person just wrapping me in this warm blanket who wants the best for me, who wants me to win, whether I joined or not.
Totally.
And that was a
That's it.
beautiful thing. And it was just like, I just remember just being crying afterwards and just like, because it was such a feeling of warmth and love that I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like this
Yeah.
is absolutely amazing. So I was like, oh, I can't wait for this follow-up consultation. I'm already in. What are we doing? We don't need it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But I do that because I think it's a, we dig deep in the consultation, and sometimes it can get really overwhelming. And we need
Mhm,
a couple of days to just kind of marinate on
mhm,
all of the things that we talk about. Because what I do know for sure is that in those consultations, oftentimes that will just open you up to have
mhm,
all of these new realizations and breakthroughs, right?
mhm,
And so oftentimes I will have that second follow-up call just so that we can have that time, and
mhm.
that time to really kind of contemplate and ponder all of the different things that we talk about. Awesome.
Absolutely.
I didn't know I was going to get emotional on this podcast. Lord have mercy. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay. So after we have this follow-up consultation, you're like, yes, I want in. So let's talk about the very beginning of working together. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what did that look like? Were you nervous? Were you excited? And what were some of those kind of first learnings or takeaways that you were getting when you first joined the program?
I was definitely nervous and excited. And then part of me felt this resistance. And
Okay.
this resistance was because, oh God, I don't want to be vulnerable to these women I don't know. This is so hard. I don't even like doing it now. And so I really had to challenge myself to get out of that because I was just like, if I don't change this, I'm going to be doing the same patterns over and over. And I didn't want to do that. And
Yeah.
so I think that's one of the first things that joining the program, we really talked, and I believe our first call, group call, is when we talked about the importance and the strength of vulnerability. And I
Yeah.
never heard anybody talk about how vulnerability is a strength. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. Because of course it had always been talked about like sharing your feelings is some point of weakness.
Yeah.
especially for people of color. Like you zip that up. You don't do anything else. You do what that's do what you're told, and that's it. And that's how you survive.
Yeah.
And so when you said that, I'm like, oh, that's different. And it just was like, okay, I got to work on that because like I said, I knew if I wasn't vulnerable, I probably would not have the success in the program, and I probably would just keep
Not
it
at
like
all.
not at all. Literally not at all. And so like just when I started to hear like other women in the program be vulnerable, and I would see them
Mhm.
share the truth, and these were other women of color, and I'm like, I can do this. Like
Yeah.
I can do this. So to see that example, it was so transformational for me. And it
Yeah.
was like, I can do this. Like I can actually do this. So it helped me open up even more and to share even more in the program. And I was really surprised at how quickly I started to share
Yeah.
because you were vulnerable, these other women were vulnerable. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, let me get on this schedule too. I got to be vulnerable. And it was just such a great connection with everybody in the group that
Yeah.
it just made you feel so seen and heard, which is so different than what I was experiencing before in life for sure.
I'm so glad that you shared that because sometimes when I tell, potential clients like, oh yeah, we're gonna have this group program, it's really amazing. They're like, ugh, I don't know about that. Like, that's too much. I'm like, girl, no, you need it. You need to practice your vulnerability, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's a safe space with women of color where we are going to hold space for you each and every time. So I'm so glad that you pointed that out because that group coaching call, like component of the program is so important and is such a game changer in so
Mhm.
many different ways. To the
Absolutely.
point where you get to actually know and different women and connect in that way. Can you share a little bit about how you were able to maybe connect with other women?
Well, and because I would hear like them talk about their challenges, and that was like, I'd never heard that in a group of women of color before. And I've been a part of many.
Yeah.
And so when I saw how like they would share like their challenges, and I'm like, it just reminded me like it was a safe space to do that with.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to connect with a group member who absolutely adore. And we just became, because we did a breakout room. And
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, I want to connect with her more outside of the program. And we do, and we talk weekly and we send each other texts, we encourage each other. We talk about any challenges that we have, whether it's personal or career. And
Yeah.
so it was such a beautiful connection that was, even with other women in the group and just them talking about and that was the other thing. It was like you felt the encouragement from them and you knew that they wanted you to be at your greatest. So
Yeah.
that was a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, I love that. So good.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I love the fact that you can find accountability partners in this
Mhm,
journey. Like, I obviously am going to be that for
mhm,
all of my clients, but to have a community because sometimes dating can actually be quite lonely. Like, you're meeting these new people, but it's actually can be really lonely. And to have someone else that is going through the same process with you, that understands the same frameworks and dynamics and guidelines that I teach all of my
mhm,
clients. uh,
mhm.
I think is really important and really helpful because your friends won't get it. They're not in the program. They don't understand
Yeah.
like how we're doing it because as you've already noted, we're dating
Mhm.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I will say I did have to set boundaries with people outside of the program. I'm just like, I'm just going to stick to my group in Anwar because they don't know like the skills that you are teaching us and to understand it. And it's just like it's done differently. So
Yeah.
I was so glad I was able to make that decision to do that because I remember the only time I said something, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm not sharing that with them ever again. So
Yeah.
just really kept it. And I'm so glad I made that decision because like I said, it's very different how you teach us how to date. And it's amazing.
Yeah. I love that. Let's talk about some of the changes that you've noticed within yourself or other people have noticed within you over the last
Mhm,
4 to 5 months that you've been in the program. And then I'll also
mhm.
share some of the changes that I've observed as well.
Okay. I would say like two things that stick out for me. Me being vulnerable, like, and not waiting to be vulnerable, like not having it build up.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I would say is like actually using my voice to ask for what I need.
That's
Because
right.
I was the quintessential suffer in silence girl,
Mm,
regardless. I was just like, well, okay, like because I didn't learn that I could use my voice to actually ask for what I needed. And that's not how I grew up anyways. And
Yeah.
so when you were giving us permission to do that, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try it. And then when my first experience with setting what I needed and being vulnerable went so great, I'm like, oh, okay, I I can do this. And then I just kind of just kept going on that journey of and it's still a challenge for me to be vulnerable. I still give myself the pep up, like you can do this, you got this. And I'm so glad I do that because before I didn't do that, I just kept quiet.
Yeah.
And then it's like they need to hear what they're not going to read your mind. Like you
Right.
actually have to tell them what you need. So
That's it.
that's what I would say.
That's it. I love that. I love that you have been able to set more boundaries than you had in the past. That,
Agreed.
like, obviously you are a boundary master because that's what you do all day, every day. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to go from like 50, it's harder to go from 90 to 98% than it is to go from 50 to 90%,
Very
right?
true.
And
Yeah.
I just think it is so amazing that you have been able to go from that 90 to 98% when it comes to boundaries, like you were talking about with other people outside of the program. Also, like within like the people that you were dating, and then now in your relationship, right? Like I think some people feel like, oh, I don't need boundaries now that I'm in a relationship. No, you need them. And if anything, you need them more. And they're probably harder to set because you actually give a damn about this person.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
But
sure.
you've been able to continuously do it, right? Even when
Mhm.
it's been hard and maybe a little bit scary. So I just want to commend you for that and acknowledge that.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
Because
that.
that's not easy to do, even if you started out as a boundary master. Yeah.
I received that. Thank you so much
Yeah.
because that is true. It is definitely different going from 90 to 98.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. We talked about vulnerability. We've talked a little bit about boundaries. We've talked about speaking up. If you could talk about kind of what it has been to really, really, really kind of go into the work and go into the trenches, and if there's been anything beyond the vulnerability that has been a game changer for you, I'd love to hear it. Hold on,
Um,
hold on, hold on.
okay.
Okay, I'm back, the 4-year-old. Okay, I'm going to start off with that question again, if that's okay.
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 Yes.
Um, so as we're thinking about kind of the program as you've experienced it right now, like what are the game-changing things that maybe you've learned that you didn't know before? And how have other people been able to witness those changes within you?
For sure. I think the biggest game changer for me is when you introduced to the group the dating plan, the dating strategy. And I was like, there's a plan? It's just like, and the plan worked so beautifully and so phenomenally. And it just took so many away of many of my anxieties about like what to do on a date.
Yeah.
So getting that dating plan was just that was a huge game changer. And when I saw like when because you would say how the guy would feel or how whoever you're dating would feel. And I'm like, oh my God, he's right. It's true. This is amazing. So the fact that those things lined up, and I'm like, I'm okay, we keep going. We
That's
just
right,
keep
girl.
going. So that was that was just and I'm becoming speechless about it because I just remember being like, okay, like we'll just see if it works. And the fact that it worked on literally date 0, which is the phone date,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, okay. And then it worked on date 1, then it worked all the way up to date 8. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. So it was a beautiful game changing plan. And then when I would hear other women in the group talk about it, how it's working for them, and even we would be excited. I'm not going to say what it is, but what date 3 would bring and like what we would have to do. And we would talk about the reactions from what happened with date 3, like when we would do what we were supposed to do.
That's
And
right.
it was, yeah. So I'm just like, I ain't giving it away. So, and it was just a beautiful thing to hear and share that experience with other women in the group for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So just for the listeners out there, so I teach my clients how to go from first conversation to first date. Then I also teach my clients how to go to from first date to date 8 and potentially exclusivity, right? So there is something to be had at every step of the way, and to have that strategy and to know that, as Scarlett was saying, I think is really important so that you can feel confident and know what your next step is, and so that you're not abdicating or giving away your power to a guy because you don't know what to do, right?
Mhm.
It happens so often. And so to have that confidence and to know exactly what your next step is and what your final step is going to be, I think is so important. And so thank you for kind of highlighting that. Because I think people like don't really understand like, well, what am I going to do with a dating coach? Yeah. No, we're going to give you a step-by-step guide so that
Mm.
you can get your guy, right? Like we're going to give you the external decisions that need to be made, but we're also going to do the internal transformational work. And I think
Yeah,
that's why we get such great results in the program. Yeah.
for sure. Because I would even say with the dates, it coincided with a worksheet that we had to work on,
Yeah.
which was really great because the getting towards exclusivity, there is the worksheet that we have to talk about needs, which was game changing. And I was like, I didn't even know I needed that. And then it was just, because it made it easier for me to explain to my guy, this is what I needed.
Yeah.
And to have it be honored. So the fact that with each date came a worksheet that coincided with it was just, I was like, it was masterful, to be honest, because I'm like, okay, cool. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to work on.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Definitely. Very cool. Um, Talk to me a little bit about, because there's a lot of women listening to this podcast, what you would tell them, right, as they're listening, because you were that girl that was listening to the podcast too, right? And I'm sure you were listening to my solo episodes or my guest coaching episodes or my former client episodes.
Mhm.
What do you think that they need to hear that will be very useful or valuable for them in terms of their potential next step?
I would say if honestly, if you've been watching Anwar, schedule the consultation. Don't hesitate. Because like I said, there's such a huge pouring into that happens in that a phone call that you're just like, wow, wow, okay. And it just, like I said, it's literally a forever impactful call and literally life transformational, that it's like, don't walk or hesitate, jump, leap, skydive, whatever you need to do to get in this call, because it is just because even if you don't sign up, I'm telling you, it's such a life transformational call, both calls, the initial and the follow-up. And it's a beautiful conversation that you will have with Anwar. And it's just like I said, if you're wanting to different results in dating, I'm te- get your guy program. You need to sign up like stat.
Stat, stat, stat,
Yeah,
stat, stat,
stat.
stat, stat.
Exactly.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Yeah.
So, girl, you got your guy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But, in the program, we obviously congratulate every woman for getting their guy, but it's really about getting yourself and finding yourself in this program. So, I want to congratulate you for all of the work that you were able to do.
Thank
So,
you.
let's talk about getting your guy, girl. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what that looked like for you, and maybe some of the things that you've learned within this newly formed relationship.
So I said, like, up to the progress of getting the guy, what I really learned from you was how to show up for myself.
Yeah.
That was essential, because when I was able to show up for myself, I started like receiving things differently, like whatever information I was receiving differently, and I was able to output actually what, like I said, what I needed. And that I've never in my life had done that before with a guy. And
Yeah.
I was just like, literally, because the examples that we would see on whatever we saw growing up, it was like always the woman being quiet. And
Yeah.
so when I was able to do that with him and express to him, like, hey, this is actually what I need, and I don't really like that. And the fact that it was honored, I'm like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and that was the thing, because I was able to share my needs initially, or probably like the second time, and not hold on to it and be vulgar or verbally volatile. I was
Yeah.
asked to actually in a place to speak from a place of peace and
Yes.
be like, hey, this is what I really need. And
Yeah.
it was received so well and so differently. And I'm like, wow, okay. Um, I would say like being with my guy, what I'm learning about is like continuing to allow someone to pour into me
Yes.
more and more, and actually allowing myself to receive what he has to give instead of always it being me giving. And it's just because one of the things she said to me was like, let him take care of you. I go, oh, okay. So, and I
And
was not,
also as a single mom, that is
yeah,
very difficult to do because you are in the business of taking, and as a therapist, you're in the
mhm.
business of kind of taking care of other people all the time,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. And so, and I will say, like, if you haven't heard the podcast, The Masculine versus Feminine Energy, please listen to it. So, and because that was game changer for me as well, and especially when we talk about it in the program. And so I was able to really sit in the empowerment of feminine energy and just allow somebody to just allow me to receive, and actually have somebody said, no, I take care of it. I got you. Don't worry about it. And that was so different. I'm like, okay, you got me. Okay. I'm gonna let you do it. Okay. And so and that was the thing, to have somebody who shows up for me in the way that I need and not the way that they want to show up for me. And
Yeah.
me say, this is actually how I need you to show up for me. The fact that that happens, I'm like, wow, okay, this is so different for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Very cool. Well, I'm so excited that you have gotten your guy and just all of the amazing transformations that you have been able to have over the last 4 to 5 months.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your experience in the program because obviously we talked a little bit about the group calls, right?
Mhm.
We talked a little bit, I think, about the online program and some of the work and worksheets that you were able to do. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of our one-on-one time, right? Because I do have office hours throughout the week that I'm able to talk with my clients one-on-one. And then also, we are always connected via Voxer, and we're
Yeah.
talking very
Mhm.
regularly on that for anything that
Mhm.
kind of happens. So, maybe if you could talk a little bit about your experiences in the office hours and via Voxer, just so
Yeah.
that I think the people can understand what it looks like to be supported within the program.
Absolutely. So the one thing that I remember you saying to all of us was just like, reach out to me on Voxer. And you like, I will respond to you, or you would say, I will hunt you down. So,
And did
'cause-
I?
and you do.
I
And
did.
so even with the one-on-one coaching calls, it's just, I love the details of it, because we really get into like the minutia and the details of what needs to continue to happen in order for you to grow. And so just really learning more about yourself and say, hey, I want you to try this. And I'm like, okay, I will. And then you'd be like, you better let me know tonight. I'm like, sir.
Yeah.
Or I'm coming for you. I'm like, okay. So, and cause like those calls were just, like I said, it was very, very intimate calls, to where it's like you were getting like the more one-on-one intention that you probably, I didn't think I needed it at first. And then after our first one, I go, yeah, I need this like all the time. And so even before dates, I would hit you up on Vox to be like, hey, just want to let you know. I would hit you up post Voxer, let you know how the date was. And then, and we would be like, okay, let's schedule a one-on-one, so we can continue to like expand on the day, talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what you think would be differently. So it's, like I said, it's just like very getting into it so that you can know what's the best path for you. So that's what I say about that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I love that we were able, one of the things that I think has given you so much success in the program is your ability to show up on the group
Mhm.
calls, on the Voxer regularly, and in
Mhm.
the office hours on a weekly basis, right?
Mhm.
Or almost weekly basis.
Yeah.
And so I just want to offer for the listeners out there that to like have the success, you got to do all of it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many different dimensions here with this program, and it
Mhm.
really is going to help you when you are taking advantage and leveraging all of the support that's going to be given to you. And I just think that you did such a great job of doing that. So
Thank you. I
I think that's
appreciate that.
really helped kind of accelerate you to achieving your love goals here. So I'm so excited about all of the work that you've been able to do, and all of this work that you are still going to be doing as you're in a relationship. I was just telling you before this podcast, like in the
Mhm.
relationship, that's when the work actually really starts.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. You're hearing me. I was like, oh, I'm scheduling after this phone, after our podcast.
Yes, so you better schedule that office hour. You
I
know it.
am, for
Um,
sure.
anything that you want to share before we go
For
about the
sure.
program, about the experience, about whatever?
So about the program, I would say like one of the things I was able to show up for self because I had to really think about what the investment I wanted for me, like
Yeah,
what I wanted to do differently. So I would encourage whoever is listening to this, like think about the investment you want to make. Because if you want to do differently, you have to invest in yourself. There's no way that you can continue to watch whatever, but to actually be in the program is so different and such a phenomenal experience. So that being said, like Amar said, I am a boundaries coach, and at the end of the year, I'm going to be launching a boundaries program.
yeah.
And
Talk
so
to the
I'm
people about that. What does that look like? What does that feel like, girl?
it's exciting because like what we talk about is really like inner child wounds and
Yeah,
like how that continues to perpetuate of why you have challenges with making boundaries.
yeah,
And so how that can project in so many different ways and you don't even think about it. So we talk about a lot of that layering. And so we talk about like, even so, a lot of times I talk about, even with clients I see now with boundaries. And so instead of being verbally volatile, we talk a lot about what I call soft landings. Like,
yeah.
how do we have a soft landing? I said, because I said, when you're verbally volatile, the person you're trying to share with doesn't hear you.
That's right.
So you want them to receive it and you want to have a conversation instead of being like, do this and that. I said, because do you like that? They were like, well, no. I said, okay, so let's talk about, let's practice the soft landing. So yeah, so I'm excited about that program because at first it's going to start. The webinar is going to be launched I'm going to have a free webinar that'll be launched in November, and then the program will probably most likely start in December or January of next year. So I'm super excited about it.
I love it. It's going to be so great. And we're going to have all of that information in the show notes. So please, everyone, check that out because even if you're not ready for my program, the core work and foundational work that we are doing is the boundaries and
Absolutely.
the healing of the inner child wound. So this is going to be such an amazing program for you if this is something that you're really interested in. So please check that out. Scarlett, thank you so much for being here in this podcast. Like it is such an honor to have you here. And I'm so excited that we have been able to work together and do such great work together. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amber. I really appreciate you.
You're so welcome, girl, anytime. And for any of the listeners out there, if you are interested and you're ready to get your guy this year, please click on that link in the show notes or go to www.getyourguycoaching.com/apply and we will have that amazing consultation that Scarlett was just talking about. All right. All right, my loves, have a great rest of your week and I will talk with you soon. Bye bye.